What's going on, fam? So let's go over a video today with Jamal Bryant. He was on Hardly Initiated, and he was discussing should men practice monogamy. And so let's see what he got to say, and let's break the video down.
Say, I am divorced because I cheated. I divorced because of my infidelity, not because of irreconcilable differences, but because I broke that covenant. And so I had to go through a healing process for myself on what is it that was in me that would go outside of the bounds of my covenant, my agreement, and to risk my family for somebody I never wanted to be with. Yeah. So I say to men all the time, one of the mistakes I made is my first attempt at monogamy was marriage.
What does that
You know what? No, I know. No,
Break that one
I know
down
where you're
for
going.
me.
And he's right. He's right. There's a lot of men that experience that. His first attempt at monogamy was marriage. And that's where information can get misled. Because when you understand what monogamy is focusing on one individual or being in a relationship with one person. Now, if his first attempt at monogamy was marriage, isn't that what the Bible says it should be? That's why we talk about a man never having sex before marriage. And that works the same way for a woman. Traditionally, according to the Bible, 2 virgins are to marry. Let me say that again. According to the Bible, 2 virgins are to marry. So when he says his first attempt at monogamy was marriage, then that's where it goes left. So now we have to deal with when you're stepping outside the principles and what the word says. And now you have to address it a different way. So if you're not 2 virgins marrying, then you have somebody who's had sex already, either or, but we're going to deal with just the men right now. And so when that happens, now the question is, well, do you practice monogamy now? And so let's see what he has to say about that. But just think about that for a minute. His first attempt at monogamy was marriage.
I think I know where you're going with it because you will even have, we got friends that have gotten married, but they've been a player for all their entire life.
Their whole lives.
Their whole lives. And they think that, hey, when I get married, it's all gonna change.
Yeah, no. So I think that you have to practice.
You gotta practice monogamy.
Yes. It ain't gonna come through osmosis.
That's so interesting because I don't know if that's something that I've really ever heard said that way prior, because it's like a conditioning into that lifestyle, because it's a whole mindset. It's a philosophy almost.
No, it's not. It's not a philosophy. It's a principle. Just listen. 2 virgins get married, both experience monogamy at the same time. But if you notice that he's not even biblical in what he's saying, that's not biblical. That's something that he says. And that's one thing about Jamal Bryant. He has a way with words. He has a way with phrases. He can really lay it down, as we would say, the word salad. He really can mix it up real good. And so when you got Christians listening to this, not understanding that this doesn't apply to what the word says. This is separate from the word. He should clarify and say, if you step out of the will of God, then you may want to start thinking about practicing monogamy. And that's the difference. That's the difference.
if you will,
Yes.
of being able to prep yourself to now have this new value system,
Yes.
and even a way to tame your urges,
Yes.
biologically of your body.
Yeah, so I'm not even giving out memberships to the players.
Listen, he should be saying, if me and my wife together was practicing monogamy, that's the way it's supposed to have been. That's the way it's supposed to be. But now we're in a generation, in a society, that's rarely ever going to happen. Waiting for marriage to have sex. In this society, it's not happening. So now what we're watching right now, if we're not careful, and to the people that's listening, we think that this is the word of God, and it's not. This is his own philosophy, basically saying is once you step out of the will of God, then there's another recourse. But that's not the will of God. Not knocking it, because I ain't perfect, and I ain't saying that, I did it the right way. What I'm saying is that we have to understand that when we listen to some of these pastors speak, they got a way with words, and we have to very carefully, and this is why teaching is important, because the preaching doesn't cover the details. Preaching doesn't cover the precept upon precept, line upon line. It kind of just gathers it all together and spits it out, and it sounds good, but there's no understanding on how to do it. So,
Club. Let's just say, hypothetically. No, seriously. Let's say hypothetically, you're dealing with 2 women in a month. Let's enlarge the tent. You're dealing with 3 women in a month.
Okay.
Let's say you live in Atlanta.
Okay.
It's 4 women in a month. Hypothetically.
Right.
Those numbers can go up quick.
Yes. I'm not advocating for this. This is not what I'm saying.
It happened, yeah.
I'm saying, let's say you with 4 women in a month, and that's the regimen you on.
Yeah.
It's natural. That's what you do.
Yeah.
You don't have no guilt about it. You don't have no conscience. None of them think that you committed. You with 4 a month. That 4th one, you decide, let me lock this down. You have not purged out your system of the 3. And the danger that we have is that we have compartmentalized our sexuality to have sex without intimacy.
okay, so let's, boy, I tell you the truth. Listen, this is what I'm saying. It gets tricky. This is a slippery road he's going down. When he uses the illustration of having like 1 woman or 2 women or 3 women or 4 women, and you finally get to that 4th one and you want to lock her down. See, the point he's missing is that if you're in the will of God, right, you shouldn't be out there chasing the women anyways, as far as sleeping with a bunch of them. 1, I can see, but 3 or 4, and if you're a man of God, bro, 1 is too many, right? So I'm talking from the point of being a man of God. Now, if you're not a man of God, or if you're just not, let me just say this, not even a man of God, but if you're out of the will of God, what he's talking about right here are brothers who are out of the will of God. That's probably has never given their life to Christ. Because if you're giving your life to Christ, there's some consciousness there. He said there's no conscience. No, there has to be a conscience there. If you're a man of God and you single, you got to be conscious at all times. And this is where it gets slippery. And so brothers start hearing this, and like these 2 young brothers, they eating it up. But no one ever took a step back and said, well, hold on, we shouldn't be having sex anyway. You should be practicing celibacy technically, right? But what he's talking about, I don't recommend for any man to have to experience that to practice monogamy. Now again, Men is gonna do what men gonna do. This is not me preaching to you and telling you what you do and what to do and not to do. I'm just bringing some clarity to what he's saying, because it could be easily misunderstood that it's the word of God that he's talking because he's a pastor. And this is where people have problems with pastors, is that he a pastor, but he's talking on the level of a worldly person. And he's not referencing him as a man of God, and being in the will of God is what's so important.
So we have so reduced the standard for ourselves that you can sleep with 4 people and feel nothing for any of them.
True.
He said that. Put the switcher, put that on here. Yeah. And so when we get to a dangerous place in our own ecosystem of our sexuality and the sanctity of that which is sacred, and we as men no longer value sexuality, then our defense is, oh, they didn't mean nothing.
That is so true.
I've been at this point. I've embraced that, and that's just what you hear, that men can have sex without
It's our
emotion.
nature.
Yeah, that is our nature.
Yeah, and I think that it's a cop-out because the woman who we are intimate with can understand that you're doing the exact same thing with me, with the person who you say you don't care about. So it's different as, oh, we just went to the movies. Oh, I just took them to Cheesecake Factory. No, they stayed at your house. They was in your shower. They wore your T-shirt. What then have you reserved sacred for me?
Man, I hear it all the time. I remember.
And so when he says that, again, that goes back to the point of what context is he coming from? From a single man who's out of the will of God, or somebody who's in the will of God? Right? That's the difference. Now, again, majority of the men today are out of the will of God. I'm not knocking them. So this principle would apply, because if you're not in the will of God and you out here kicking in and doing whatever, and you out here getting it in, as we would say, we definitely have to take into consideration that this is who he's talking about. But for a man of God who's in the will, his whole purpose is like, Father, I want to stay in your will because I have to answer to you, and I got to trust that you will bring the right person to me. Now, again, that's all things being equal, but not every man is that strong. So he may take this route that he's talking about. And so taking that route and practicing monogamy, yes, you would do. There are some things you would have to do in this situation that he's talking about getting married. So, but if he's coming from his point of view, then that questions, okay, so were you saved or not saved? You know, was you responsible? I mean, he said he stepped out and he had a whole family. And so that's his excuse. I don't know if he's using it for an excuse, but when you say, this was my first attempt at monogamy, and this is maybe the reason why I stepped out, I should have practiced monogamy before getting married. In other words, you didn't practice monogamy before you got married if you was a minister. Why should a minister practice monogamy? See the difference? But what he's talking about a regular brother who's not in the will of God. But before you got married, you was a pastor before you got married, or if I'm not a pastor, he was in ministry. Let's put it that way. He was in ministry. So basically what you said is now you got a minister who's over some sheep or responsible for sheep that's not in the will of God. But that's for another day.
We had guests come on here, Dr. Nicole and Crystal, and they made a statement. They said you got to learn how to change your appetite.
Yes.
And I think you just really brought that glue there to you just tied it all together, because when I'm thinking about it, it makes sense, because if your body is conditioned to even having a certain amount of meals a day,
yes,
eating certain types of food,
yes,
and all of a sudden you tell your body, I'm a cold turkey switch to now this type of diet, and you have not practiced that diet, you have not conditioned yourself into really slowly weaning in
I'm
to
going
this
to see your
new-
point and raise your point. If, as a single man, 5 nights a week, you are getting food from drive-through, you don't know how to appreciate a home-cooked meal because you're used to now eating out of a bag. So you got somebody who's cooking for you at home. Your knee reflex is, why? You don't want to go out? Because you have adopted French fries and don't understand that mashed potatoes is a better choice. But because my palate is used to packets of ketchup, I don't know what Worcestershire sauce is. You got
Hey, you see what I'm saying? He can play on words. He can play on words. Our brother is a perfectionist at word salad. And that sounds so good. It's not even good, it sounded true. It's true for a man who's out of the will of God. He never addressed God not one time so far in none of his conversation. And the importance of standing in the will of God during that time. So I just want to make sure that we understand that his conversation is not the will of God that he's talking about. He's talking about being out of the will of God. And this is what you have to do. Practicing monogamy is a reaction for not being in the will of God. You practice monogamy because you're not in the will of God.
Right.
Yeah, so you got to change your whole mind frame, your whole thought process of how I deal with all of it. The most unnerving question. I want y'all to type this down. Brothers, you're going to high-five me through the internet. The most unnerving question you can ever ask a single man is, where are you going? Now, you done crossed the line. Why? I'll be back.
Right.
Yeah, because accountability has become an inconvenience. And you may not even been going in doing anything untowards, but just having to answer
It's offensive.
where you going is intrusive.
Yeah.
And so that call for transparency is a part of the commitment to monogamy.
So is practicing monogamy literally as simple as me meeting a young lady and having the intention to solely date her for marriage? Is it as simple as that?
No. The practice of monogamy is not allowing a backup plan.
Okay, so again, this is where it gets slippery. Practicing, in his term, monogamy is not for not having a backup plan. You practice monogamy, if you're going to practice monogamy, it's to so that you're in the will of God first. Then you can look at what's after that. But the first priority of practicing monogamy is not so that you don't have a backup plan. Practicing monogamy, according to how he's using it, you should be in monogamy because you're one to please and stay in the will of God first. Now, when you look at it from this aspect, from what he's talking about, I give him credit. And he's saying everything correctly for somebody who's out of the will of God. But if you're in the will of God, I can't rock with that. And this is where the preaching and teaching comes in. I said it before. This is where it gets intertwined and get mixed up. But if you're going to practice monogamy, it should be, first of all, that I need to stay in the will of God because that's where my blessings come. See, if you out here running around between women, it's hard to see who God has for you. Now, again, I'm not saying that I was perfect at it. I failed at it a couple of times. But I knew inside that this wasn't the will of God. I was pleasing my flesh, like most men do. And I ain't knocking it because that's what men do. That's why we have to subdue our flesh. Because if we're not careful, our flesh should be running wild. And so you have to remember that this monogamy thing he's talking about is to please God first. Not so you don't have a backup plan, but it's so that you stay in the will of God first.
That is the praise. All of them say, you know what? Lisa's my girl, Kim's my girl, Nicole's my girl. But you got to back up. You ain't got to tend to. You know, but it's going to be, this is the reserve forces. It's to make up in your mind, there is no backup plan. I am all in. I'm all in. We can fall out. We can be mad at each other. You don't want to talk to me, but I am calling you in the morning. And we starting this over.
You see what I'm saying? That's the point I'm making. Because are you talking from your personal experience or are you just talking in general? Because with that mindset, as a man of God, then you telling me that you stepping out shouldn't have been the cause of your divorce. Let me say that again. You stepping out shouldn't have been the cause of your divorce. If you're all in. Now again, there's some physical problems going on, or you know, it can cause something can cause physical harm to each other. Different story. But when you're talking about what he's talking about and his life experience, he started the conversation by saying, I got divorced because of my infidelity and not because of reconcilable differences. And that's the difference. Because if it was just, you just felt at monogamy and you were all in, stepping out shouldn't have been the reason why you got a divorce.
Not, oh, she tripping. Let me go through who's next.
That's the exact opposite of everything that I've personally been taught.
Yes.
In fact, a part of dealing with multiple women is that it shields you from vulnerability. Because if you...
And let me also say this too. When we're talking monogamy and practicing monogamy and having sex are two different things. It's two different things. You can be in a relationship and not have sex. You can go on dates and do all these other things and you're fine. What a problem occurs is when you get past the point of the dinners and the dates and it crosses over into a sexual relationship. That's where the problem begins. So monogamy and being in a relationship and dating, but monogamy and having sex, it changes the game. Completely changes the game.
You do have multiple women. When that one woman is busy for that night,
yes,
or when she doesn't answer your phone, or when that text come in late, it's okay. You're not even worried.
Yes.
Because you got a lineup that you can just go to fulfill that exact
One
need.
is too close to none, right? That's what
one
they
is
say.
too close to none. Exactly.
Yeah, and we nobody deals with the fear men have of being alone. Yeah, Elvis Presley developed a sex addiction because he said he didn't like sleeping in the bed by himself. Elvis Presley is the very first person in the country to have a California king bed.
Yeah, that's a fact. I heard that story too, and because I have a king size bed, and somebody asked, "Did you want the California king?" years ago. I didn't know what a California king was, and the salesman actually told me where it came from. But as he was saying about Elvis Presley dealing with loneliness, yes, that's a valid point, because men don't know how to deal with loneliness or being alone. And this is where it changes at here for me. every man should learn how to be alone. Understanding your solitary confinement in your own space. Every man should be able to do that, or should do that, because that's where your happiness lies. In that time by yourself, you know how to make yourself happy. You don't rely on your wife to make you happy. And if we were talking about the women, I would tell the women the same thing. You don't rely on the man for your happiness. Your happiness comes from within. And so, yes, men today don't know how to handle being alone. And I get it. Trust me, I've been down that road. When you're at home and it's late at night and you're trying to figure out how you gonna entertain yourself, and your mind start wandering, and next thing you know, you got somebody coming over that night. For y'all don't know, you younger people, that's what we call a booty call. That's where that term came from. It came from Bill Bellamy, who did a skit on Def Jam, and he was talking about a booty call. And that's where that really comes from, where is from being alone and you trying to find something to fill that void. You're trying to find something to entertain you just so you can go to sleep, because you don't want to fall asleep in the bed by yourself. As we would say, I'd rather go to sleep passed out and go to sleep versus trying to go to sleep the whole night. If y'all get what I'm saying. You want to put in some work and pass out and go to sleep. Then you ain't got to think about the rest of the night or how you're going to try to fall asleep. But that's a skill in itself that you have to learn over time, is finding your peace within. And if you're peaceful and you know how to find your peace and your happiness in your solitude, going to sleep won't even be an issue. Especially for men who are business owners, the entrepreneurs, or you got a real demanding job, going to sleep ain't the issue. Hey, I gotta go to sleep, get up, I got this to do tomorrow morning, A, B, C, D. You're so focused on planning out your next day, going to sleep is not an issue. It's an award. It's an award to go to sleep so you can get some rest, so I can jump up and do what I got to do the next morning.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, he had that built. He said, this is too big for me to have it by myself. And nobody deals with, even as men, what we don't talk about is men being lonely. Yeah.
That's a weakness.
Yeah.
That's a weakness for a man to feel like, especially to acknowledge that he don't like being alone.
This philosopher, his name is Soren Kierkegaard. He said something that has stalked me to this day. He said, the greatest gateway to sin is not temptation.
It's boredom.
The greatest gateway to sin is boredom.
Yep.
And when you do an inventory of the majority of the women you mess with, you weren't tempted by them.
It was bored.
You were bored. Mm-hmm. And so you went through the phone and made the decision, man, what am I do?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can come back, Dr. Jamal.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm not sure.
No, it's okay.
I mean,
He got a tear coming out his eye. You see that?
anytime it hits deep like that, because it's really got me thinking. And it's touching. I mean, we've even thrown around jokes that's just like, oh man, I just went through my whole phone.
Yeah.
You know, just looking for.
And here's the thing: if you're a man of God and you're trying to stay in the will of God, you can only play that game for so long. Run around, keep getting women, because it should be the Holy Spirit within you convicting you. Because once you understand that, once you get that deep in the game, sex is not about the sex no more. It becomes a form of therapy sexually for you and that other person. And when that dependency happens, that's where it gets dangerous. Because now the stress that I'm going through, the things that I'm going through, I can come to this person, have these conversations with them, and then have a sexual relationship with them, and it'll help me deal with it better. But what you're finding out is that you're creating a soul tie. You're creating a soul tie. And that's where it gets dangerous, because a soul tie is not a relationship. It's a feeling. That's why it's called a soul tie. Because we are spiritual beings. We have a soul and we live in this physical body. Our spirits are not connected. Our souls are. The soul is a part of the physical being. You need a soul to operate on this earth. You need a soul and a physical body to operate on this earth. And that's where it gets dangerous, because now when you find someone, those soul ties that you created in the past now have to be dealt with. And it's usually like breaking up a relationship, but it's a different type of breakup. It's a breakup without no drama. It's a breakup of hurt. That tie that you have with that person has to snap. And in some cases, that backup plan he's talking about, that's a part of the backup plan, because it was probably someone that you had a soul tie with before. Men have this saying, and women have it too. Men always have that one woman that they can go to, that they can know for sure, I call her, she's going to be there for me. Sexually. It starts out as a venting. You start out venting and you start complaining, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's going to end in sex. Because that's how your stress is relieved, is through sex. And that's the part that becomes the problem for most men, is cutting off those soul ties. It's the same thing with women, but we're dealing with men right now. We can deal with women on another day. It's worse for a woman, because that's an emotional plus the soul tie. But for men, it becomes the soul tie that's his backup plan.
It's looking.
Yes.
And that's when you bored at 9 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
When all your work is done.
Yes.
It's nothing else for you to do.
Yes.
You haven't given yourself a night routine, expected anything of yourself to
Yes.
been accomplished. And now you got this open, idle calendar sitting there with you. The only thing on there is Niecy, Jessica, Megan,
Right.
and everybody
and
else.
you have to ask
Hey, it's a scripture in the Bible says that an idle mind is a devil's workshop. That's exactly what he's describing. Well, all your work is done and you got this gap of time, your mind starts to idle, and that's where the devil starts to play. Because you got that, think about it, you should be in the bed by 12 if you got to get up at 6, 7 in the morning. But we try to find something to fit in there between 9 and 12. That's all I need. That's where the booty call comes in at. Between 9 and 12. She's at the club. I ain't go out tonight. I'm at the home on a Friday night. You hit her up and go, hey, what you doing after the club? She said, I'm coming to your house. After the club, she's already loose because she's been drinking. So she's excited. And it makes that night that much more fun. And now you can go to sleep relieved and not have to worry about the next day. Other than, okay, you got to go. Can't be here all night. You sleep better in your bed. But that's what the booty call comes in at. It's during that time when you're bored, and that's what they say about the idle mind is the devil workshop. That's why you can't let your mind idle, because that's when the devil comes in.
yourself, did they become my girl for perfect attendance? Or was it because of a connection?
Wow.
He said
So
perfect
I
attendance.
settled
Yeah,
with-
that's true.
Who was consistent?
Yeah.
You hear that too? And
And that's a weakness too of men, because the one that's always there, the one, you see how he plays on the words, he'll mix it up. He said the one with the perfect attendance. That's the one that we usually settle with, because she's always there. Right? She's always there. She don't complain. We do what we want to do. She ain't causing no drama. Those are the ones that we usually go with.
I mean, you hear men take pride in that. Yeah, she was always there.
Yes.
That's what you'll hear all the time.
Yeah. But you were never emotionally there.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we a lot of times let our hearts settle where there is no expectation. So we love who questions us the least.
Right.
We love who challenges us the least.
Right.
We love who demands from us the least.
Right.
Oh, that's a good girl right there. Our standard is no drama when the drama is really accountability.
I have a 20.
And he ended with there's drama, we mistake it as drama, and it's really accountability. I have to disagree. It's when you have drama like that, it can become very, very, very tricky.
2-year-old son.
When you start talking
I
about the
want
drama.
to say,
Excuse
I
me.
am
Sorry about that.
divorced.
It becomes very tricky. I'm going to cut that off and then we'll come back. He ended with, because she's not complaining, she's not doing anything, and then we confuse drama with accountability. And that's another issue that I have. The drama is not accountability. The drama is drama. Accountability is accountability. Accountability that a man should have, he should be accountable for himself first, and then his spouse. We hear a lot of pastors say, well, your mate should be your accountability partner. I don't agree. Your mate shouldn't be your accountability partner. You should be your accountability partner. Before your mate was there, you should be, that's what discipline, self-discipline comes in. It's self-accountability. And what happens is if a man allows a woman to hold him accountable, it then turns into control. Because everything that he does that doesn't align up with what she think should be, she reels him back in. And not understanding, if you're going to be an accountability partner, you have to be accountable or be an accountability partner to that person when it's talking about the whole picture, not just your insecurities. I'm talking to the women. A lot of women use accountability partner because it protects their insecurity. Why you going over there? Why you doing this? Who on your phone? Who you talking to? Who you texting to? And that's one of my pet peeves. No, it's not gonna happen over here. I see brothers out here now that we out in public with the brothers, and this man can't even leave his wife's side because of her insecurity. He can't move 2 feet. Hey man, yo, the brothers over here playing dominoes. You want to come over and play? Oh no, I'm cool. And the whole time he's up under his wife, while she is in a group with a bunch of women, and he the only dude over there. Because he knows if he leaves, he knows it's going to be an argument when they get back home. Hell, be an argument on the way home. And that's the difference between having an accountability partner versus holding your own self accountable. Now, if she is dealing with her insecurities, she wouldn't have to use accountability for control. And that's what most insecure women do today. They use the accountability situation because they're really insecure. They're insecure. All right, well, let's do that. Hey, thank you guys for listening. And we'll see you on the next one.